This is the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 177th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am your host, Joe Mays, alongside of me, co-host, J-Raff.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We had off a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later. But it's good to be back, and, we're closing in on the best sports month of the year. Well, probably not the best sports month, but
the worst sports month.
The best month overall in July.
Right,
but,
sure.
We still have a couple more shows here in June to get us there.
Yeah, we almost didn't have a show tonight, and that was all my fault. Actually, the last few weeks has really been all my fault, but it's just kind of been good to take a little bit of a break.
What did you do?
For those of you not aware, just a little over a week ago, eight days ago now, my second daughter was born, as my wife would say, finally, as she was due June 1st, but on June 6th.
Yeah, she was due 2 weeks
ago.
Right,
yeah. On Monday, June 1st was the due date, but she decided to grace us with her presence the evening of Saturday, June 6th at a little after 8 o'clock. That's when Hailey Linda Mays entered the world and has
kind of been a whirlwind for last week,
taking away the sleep from Kelly and I for the last week or so.
No
and
more
expect that to continue for the next 18 years. But, things have settled with Natalie. So
someone told me this saying, a little while ago with my son, Austin, and they had said, your kids will always keep you from sleeping. It's just how they keep you from sleeping is what changes, but they will always keep you from sleeping. I was like, that's only kind of comforting, actually. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for that, I guess. So we're going to keep it short tonight. We're just going to talk to one topic. We're probably going to actually change the show going forward to really focus on one thing. I think too often we try to tackle too much, and as much as I think we'd love to be able to do this more than once a week and maybe more than 3 or 4 times a month, obviously there's a lot going on in both of our lives that we can't dedicate that much time to this hobby, this voluntary endeavor. Although we enjoy to do it and we'll continue to do it, we're not stopping it, but the shows are probably going to be a little bit shorter for the next couple months, and we're just going to tackle the one topic so that we're not rushing through and not giving our best effort. So tonight we're going to wrap up the draft finally. I know it seems like that was so long ago, which it was like 6 weeks ago, but we had a lot of topics to cover. Then we were off for 2 weeks, so this evening we're going to finally wrap up the NFL draft talk. We've got 4 teams to discuss, being all AFC teams, because we covered the 2 NFC teams that we usually focus on, being the Eagles and the Cowboys. We did that 3 weeks ago on episode 176. We talked about that after wrapping up part of the Deflategate. Of course, we have emails sitting in our inbox from Rich in Massachusetts about more Deflategate stuff. I don't know if we should touch on that this show or not, if we should just move along.
Yeah, I think if we do, we'll probably get sucked back in there. Maybe we'll save some of that for after. You know what? That would be a good time to do that. Would be maybe, who knows when we'll hear about the appeal, but the appeal's for
June 23rd.
Not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, right? Or no, a week from Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It's June 23rd, so I think.
Right? Today's the 14th.
That's a Saturday.
It is the 23rd. No. If today's the 14th.
Yeah. So
that's a Tuesday.
Oh, right.
Sunday.
10 days, not 7 days. Right. Yeah, wow. I haven't been sleeping. Did I tell you that? But yeah, so the 23rd is Tom Brady's appeal. So maybe the week after that.
Right. You know what they're going to do? It's going to break July 3rd, or that Friday night.
Right.
So that it's not big news,
Right. You're probably right. So.
But anyway, so that might be a good time to kind of recap some of that stuff and go through once we have a decision on how this is actually going to play out.
On what's going to go down and whatnot. Before we dive into the discussion on the draft classes, let's tell the fine folks listening how they can contact us, and Justin has that information for you.
Yeah, we'd love to, have any of your takes. We'd love to answer your questions or, talk about any of the points you'd like us to mention. You can call the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. You can also email the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com.
We also have social media presence. The primary ones are Facebook and Twitter. You can like our fan page at facebook.com or follow us on Twitter at Joe Mays and J-Raff. Okay, like Ed mentioned just a few moments ago, we're talking NFL draft. This is the second part of our draft series, going with the AFC North teams and the AFC East teams that we focus on, being the Steelers, Ravens, Dolphins, and Patriots. Well, let's start at the top left. I know your favorite team from Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's talk about what the Steelers were able to do. Way back at the end of April, very beginning of May. The Steelers, unlike some of the teams, did have a first-round pick, and pull up our little stat sheet here. All right, so their round one pick goes once again to address the defensive side of things, which they've done a lot in the last few drafts. I don't know if they've seen much contributions from the guys they've taken.
Who was it that they got last year?
Last year was Ryan Shazier.
Oh, yeah.
And then the year before, I think, was Jarvis Jones.
It was. And I know they like both of those guys. The issue becomes, do you like them as a first-round pick as you move on? I think Shazier, I think that one's really going to work out. Jarvis Jones, who everyone kind of really liked, but he had that spinal cord issue that kind of was up in the air a little bit.
That scared teams away.
Right. He's got a lot of potential. And you know what? I think there's a potential for their linebacker unit to be really solid again. Now, it's going to be interesting because they've changed defensive coordinators in Pittsburgh, and it had been kind of a steady program there for a long time. And last year, the last few years, the defense wasn't what it needed to be, and especially on against the pass, they were getting shredded over and over again. With some of their big names and fan favorites not necessarily holding up their end of the deal.
Now gone.
Now have retired. And I think we already talked about this. They lost one to free agency and at least two more to retirement or something like that.
Troy Polamalu retired.
Right. Maybe two to...
Ike Taylor, did he retire?
He may have retired, but he's not with the Steelers
He's not
anymore.
with the Steelers.
Right.
I don't think he's signed with anyone. If he didn't retire, you think he's still a free agent.
Right.
They also, I know for a fact, lost their nickel cornerback in
Right.
McCain because he went to the Dolphins.
Right. And so,
that's
an
three
area
starters. I mean, because
right.
your nickel cornerback
Now,
in this NFL is
you
still
can look
a starter.
at it as, and I brought this up. Somebody, not to get diverted,
addition
to the
by
Eagles,
subtraction.
But somebody's like, Chip Kelly, blah blah blah. 75% of the roster is not the same as 2 years ago. I'm like, yeah, but that was a 4-11 team.
Right? Who cares?
I would like to, without having to.
I'm guessing
go do
they
it
were
myself,
either 5-11 or 4-12.
Figure out what the other percentages were. Yeah. Sorry, 4-12.
Right? Why would you care about the players from that team?
Right. So I understand because they've lost some big players, but at the same time, you look at the Steelers, yeah, they lost a lot in the secondary, but I think you could look over and over. The secondary was not necessarily a strong spot.
How many times have we said that one of the worst, most overrated defensive backs in the league was Ike Taylor?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Even at his best, I didn't think he was that good. Polamalu, at his best, was incredible.
But that was more than 5 years ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It was when I was out in school there. It was right after.
It was the first 5 years of his career.
Right,
5,
he was incredible.
6, 7 years.
He played with that reckless demeanor, which was incredible to watch. He was a fan favorite.
Because he was 04 class of 04, draft class of 04.
He was Carson Palmer's roommate out at USC.
Okay, yeah, so that would have been a couple years after that, yeah.
And had a great, but yeah, since there's a couple Super Bowls ago, he hasn't really. Yeah, because
I think even the year that they lost to the Packers, wasn't he injured that year?
Yeah, he didn't play. He
barely played
most of the
season.
So
I mean, it really was. You're talking the first 6 years of his career were dynamic. But
now,
since then,
they went secondary with their second round pick. They went with Senquez Golson out of Ole Miss.
But he replaces McCain, and questionably because he's 5'8".
Right.
He's diminutive.
Right.
He's like me out there, except a lot faster. Naturally, he's a professional football player, but.
Well, they're sure hoping.
No, you're right. I'm sure he's much faster than me. He plays in the SEC. SEC speed.
Let's think about it. It is funny how, depending on your height, the shorter you are, the faster you have to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to see that correlation, graphed out.
Can you imagine if you were 4'11", how fast you'd have to be?
like
3
super fast, like Usain
3
Bolt
second
fast.
40.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they went with Senquez Golston in the second round. They also added Dorian Grant from Ohio State in the fourth. And then finally added a safety. The first two were cornerbacks. They added a safety in Gerard Holloman, who at one time was seen as a pretty high pick. He was the Jim Thorpe winner, best defensive back in college football.
Which is kind of crazy that he was there in the seventh
Well,
round.
yeah, because, I mean, actually at times, and this was at the very beginning of the draft process last year, so we're talking end of summer, very early fall. We actually had him early second, late first round.
So what happened?
Mocks.
How did he fall to the seventh?
Well, the more that you watch the films, you realize that he might have
Playing
been
the ACC.
freelancing a bit,
Right.
taking chances when he shouldn't have been. There were
Which
questions.
pro quarterbacks will
Right.
burn
I believe
you
there were
on that.
questions of whether or not he could properly read and diagnose plays and opposing offenses. I think it came up that there were some athletic traits that also weren't top notch. But
And when you look at free safety in college, you're still going to be a better athlete than a lot of guys. Here in the NFL, if they have an athletic mismatch, they're going to get the quarterback on, I'd say, 20, 25 of the teams is going to get them into a package or into a formation where you're going to be exposed if you're the weaker athlete. And that could be a big issue, if you can't keep up.
the Steelers made 8 selections. 6 of the 8 were on defense, which is
Which-
where we know they
which
needed
makes
help.
sense.
Big Ben's gone on the record saying that this could be the most dynamic offense he's played with in his
Right.
time at Pittsburgh. Last year's offense was record-setting at times. The defense just couldn't keep him in there. So it makes sense that 6 of their 8 were defensive, especially the first
Now,
2.
One thing, and you've seen it kind of with other style, wide receivers like Calvin Johnson has been slowed down a little bit. He's becoming more and more of a veteran, obviously, but like some of those other style wide receivers, that's not necessarily where the big play threats are coming from for the Steelers, but Antonio Brown has had a few big years in a row now.
He had a huge year last year.
Right.
He was arguably the best wide receiver in the game last year.
Absolutely. But you're a tweaked hamstring or something like
Right.
away from all of a sudden, if you look at the other wide receivers, there's some unknowns there because, they've got a lot of young guys.
their wide
Martavis
receiver
Bryant
car,
he'll be his second year, right?
Yeah, but
And
he
Sammy,
has potential.
Sammy Coates out
Rookie.
of Clemson, rookie. Devin Gardner, who's a converted
Quarterback,
Right, he's a quarterback.
Couldn't even hack it in New
right.
England already.
Darius
He's already on
Hayward
his-
Bay. That's an interesting one. I kind of gave him a pass early on as like
'Cause he was with the
he
Raiders?
went to the Raiders and you're like they just don't know how to develop talent. But then
Then he
he's
went
gone
to the
other
Colts.
places.
He was
Right,
at
he
the
went to the
Colts.
Colts, and if you can't cut it on the Colts as a wide receiver, where for 2 decades now it seems like they can take anyone and turn you into a
Right.
good wide receiver. If you can't cut it there, I don't know how you're going to cut it here. So
Yeah, Hayward Bay, he's a track star that puts on the pads, and he hasn't been able to do much. And the other one, interesting, was Marcus
Yeah.
Wheaton. But I mean, when you look at a
Wheaton
depth
really
chart,
underwhelmed me last year.
well,
I thought
for 2 years now, yeah,
right.
But-
And last year in the preseason, he had like one big game in the preseason. Everybody thought he was about to break out, and then it just didn't happen.
A lot of times it takes 3 years. This is his 3rd year.
Right.
And with them drafting Bryant and Coates now in back-to-back years in the early rounds, this is a kind of year he's got to do something. But to have the top 5 of Brown, Bryant, Coates, Hayward Bay, and Wheaton, that's not a bad place to be.
Right. And the key is going to come down to the running back. They're a little sketchy the first week.
Right.
But
Le'Veon
after
Bell's a
that,
suspension.
Le'Veon Bell should be fine.
But D'Angelo Williams is good enough for one game.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
For one game.
And if you use him right, he's a heck of a second the second back, and you have Dree Archer, which I think as the 3rd running back, as more of the Darren Sproles type
Right,
back
exactly,
there,
yeah.
can be incredible. Yeah, I like their situation there if they can stay healthy. You have to agree, I'd say in the second half of his career, this is maybe the best offense Roethlisberger has had around him.
And they're young. They're like
Right.
he said, they could be dynamic. And so it'll be interesting when in just like a month from now, we're going to start our NFL preview, which
Right.
hallelujah.
Now, the thing is, though, will they have enough defensive help? We talked about this, and you actually brought this to my attention last year about how a change in scheme generally gives you a
little
statistical
bump up.
bump.
Because you're showing different things than you've seen over the last few
Right,
years, especially in Pittsburgh, where the defense has been the same for how long.
Right.
I mean, not to say that there's going to be a radical shift, but just a little bit here and there could throw it off enough that the Steelers could see a bump up in a win or two.
If they become middle of the pack defense, this offense could be good enough to not only win the AFC North, but
Could
maybe
be
contend
AFC.
for AFC.
Yeah,
and
why not?
I hate to say dark horse, but when you look at it, like they're going to be overlooked. People are going to jump on the Colts with the free agents.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That they got this year.
They're the new dream team.
People
right?
are going to jump on the Patriots with us against the world mentality. There's gonna. I think we already saw some of the Dolphins. Like, there's some hot picks out there. Don't overlook the Steelers.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into it because we've got a lot of teams
and
to
that's
cover.
that's
but
a couple months.
That is definitely when we get the AFC North. I'm definitely feeling the Steelers right
To
now.
summarize, they picked up a lot of help on defense, and they need it. So
Right.
they need to stay healthy on offense, and even if they can get a little bit better on defense, where not all these guys may contribute this year, but you're just adding depth to your defense. They need some of the guys they've drafted over the last 2-3 years to really step up.
Right.
Like those linebackers we mentioned.
And
at
obviously the pick we're most happy about was in the fifth
Yes.
round when they took Penn State tight end Jesse James.
Right.
So we're
And
happy for him
they
to latch
also
on there.
free agent picked up Miles Diefenbach.
Correct.
And I'm
Yeah.
happy
So
for
2
him.
Penn Staters in Pittsburgh just in this rookie class. And Jesse James, I think, has a chance to supplement both Heath Miller and Matt Spaeth because
He's
Heath
kind of
Miller,
in between.
He's more of a Jesse James is a pass catcher. He's that
Yeah.
big body at tight end, where Heath Miller is good at both. Spaeth is
Right.
more of a blocker. Jesse James is that if they want to go into a 2 tight end set and throw the ball, not run it.
Heath Miller is going to line up on the end, chip his guy, and then run straight down the seam.
Right.
Whereas Jesse James, you can kick him out, and he can line up as
As a
like
wide
essentially the
receiver,
slot
yeah.
wide receiver there, and you can, or in that slot position. Obviously, not quite got the speed of a slot wide receiver, but you know what I mean.
Staying in the AFC North, we'll go to the Steelers' main rival, the Baltimore Ravens. They upset the Steelers in the playoffs last year. After the Steelers won the division, the Ravens came in and beat them for the first time under, I think, Harbaugh in the playoffs. They beat the Steelers, and it was a big one, but they obviously couldn't get much done else in the playoffs, falling in the next round. In the draft this past end of April and early May, they made 9 selections, and they were really looking to beef up the offense this time around after losing Torrey Smith to the 49ers.
And they
question marks at running back.
They let another wide receiver go. I forget. I think they lost 2 wide receivers this year.
Yeah, I can't recall.
But anyway, they when you look at it, maybe not.
I mean, they still have Steve Smith. So.
Yeah. But anyway, so they did pick 2 wide receivers. They started their draft with a wide receiver in Brashad Perryman, who we saw when UCF played Penn State in Week 1, and UCF had some quarterback issues throughout the year that kind of hurt them. We basically talked about this, and they talked about it. No matter what draft coverage you were following, Brashad Perryman will make some catches that you're like, oh my gosh,
Wow,
that
can't
is
believe he
insane.
caught that.
And he will drop some other ones where it's, oh my gosh, that's insane. Yeah. How does a professional not catch that? Like, you have the 2 extremes. I heard some people talk during the draft, and this is actually an interesting issue, that he's like, just the drops, this was a former GM, he thinks it may be like a vision issue, and like,
maybe.
And he said they have had guys like that before, where some of those just unexplained. They thought maybe it's concentration stuff coming in, but when they brought him in, now you would think that stuff would be something in the physical that they would cover, though.
You would think.
I don't know. But anyway, it's just he could provide some big plays for them. That they've been looking for from wide receivers, especially with some of their losses.
Right.
Their last pick that was wide receiver is a wide receiver out of Georgia Tech, which is always interesting how Georgia Tech continues to put people in the NFL at wide receiver, even though they run the triple option.
Like triple option offense. So Perriman, I mean, a nice pick at 1. If you can overcome the drops, that's a great pickup, a great replacement for Torrey Smith. But I don't want to get into the Ravens preview. Just stick to the draft picks. I love the Max Williams picks. He was the best tight end in the draft class this season out of Minnesota. Bit young, he was only a redshirt sophomore, but proved time and time again that he's a big player there.
It's going to be big to see if they can actually get production out of tight end. They had production out of tight end, and then a few years ago it kind of like went away through injuries, and they drafted Pitta and they drafted someone else, and neither one has been able to really stay on the field, and they've kind of gone away from them now. Like, they need guys to fill in now at tight end.
They doubled down at receiver with Perriman and Waller, but they also doubled down at tight end with Max Williams and Nick Boyle from Delaware, so semi-local product there for the Ravens in the 5th round. They did add a couple pieces on defense, primarily Carl Davis in the 3rd. I love that pick. Thought he could have gone in the 2nd round. Iowa, just another key Hawkeye defensive lineman. They also pick up Javorius Buck Allen, underrated running back from USC. When I had Kyle Krabs on, that was one of his underrated players in this draft. So a solid pickup for the Ravens there.
You know, running back's kind of like an undecided spot there on their team as well.
All right. We're going to move to the AFC East now and cover the Dolphins first quickly. We've talked about them a lot in the lead up to the draft because of them being my team and the one I cover for Draft Tech. And everyone knows how much I wanted Devontae Parker. And
you got
lo and behold, that's who Miami got. And he was lighting up camp, and then they found that he had broken his toe or something in his foot and had surgery.
Which is interesting because what was the one issue with Devontae Parker going into the draft was his health.
So it basically is like, he is a dynamic pick when he's healthy. So he's supposed to be ready at the beginning of the year, but with the Dolphins' surprise depth now at the wide receiver position after adding Greg Jennings and drafting Parker, they don't have to rush him along, but he seemed to have all the physical traits to succeed in the NFL. Possibly ready for week 1. Don't know if they'll rush him or not. The 2nd round, I got railed on by people following Draft Tech for having the Dolphins pick a tackle in the last few mocks that I did, because they're like, we just signed Sue. We have Earl Mitchell, and we have all these other defensive tackles. All of them were undrafted and had a combined 11 starts in the NFL. And I was like, I don't know. It's a talent just says defensive tackle. Now, who I had them taking was Carl Davis, who went to the Ravens in the 3rd. But they actually grabbed Jordan Phillips, who was a first-round fringe prospect and could be a dynamic, incredible tackle if the coaching staff can get it out of him. He's a little bit lethargic in that respect, not always going 100%.
But you're also, and I know that you see this, we talk about it more when we're talking about the defensive ends, and the outside linebacker and stuff, but when you've got Sue in some other playmakers at other spots on the line, all of a sudden, sometimes that helps you make more plays.
So the Dolphins now have Ndamukong Suh and Earl Mitchell as their top 2 guys. They drafted Jordan Phillips. Oh, and they also signed C.J. Mosley, Sue's teammate last year in Detroit. And they have those 3 undrafted guys, 2 of which they were pretty high on. So their defensive line rotation, or at least at tackle, absolutely great. In the next round, in the 4th round, they didn't have a 3rd-round pick. They picked Jamil Douglas out of Arizona State, a guard. They need help with the interior offensive line, and according to camp, he's already worked his way into splitting first-team reps, so that's great.
Which means he's going to be starting.
Probably. That's the way it's looking, which is fine.
Oh, absolutely.
Then in the 5th, I only mentioned they drafting Bobby McCain because they signed not-related Bryce McCain and also have Chris McCain on the roster, so they now own every McCain in the NFL is on the Dolphins.
They're going to have to go with the multiple letter abbreviations, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, and Bobby, Bryce, and Chris. So I hate when they write 3 letters. It'll be Bob McCain on the back.
I hope they do it.
Bree and Bob McCain. I hate that. I think they should just go with McCain. The next pick, though, in the 5th round, they had 4 picks within 12 selections in the 5th round. They went Bobby McCain, and then the next one was one of my favorites, Jay Ajayi, the running back from Boise State, who dropped for medical reasons, but thought of as maybe the second, to some people, second best running back behind Gurley. Even better than Gordon to some people, but at least the 3rd best. Falls all the way to the 5th. He will definitely supplement.
And your 2nd pick in the 5th.
Right, and he'll supplement and complement Lamar Miller quite well. And Dolphins then added actually 2 defensive pieces in Cedric Thompson, a hard-hitting safety from Minnesota, and Tony Lippett, who most recently played wide receiver at Michigan State, but actually is a cornerback, and that's where he's playing for the Dolphins. They need all the help they can get at cornerbacks, and Tony Lippett so far has looked good in camp.
Right, and you hope that your front 7 can just produce enough pressure that your your backfield can just be okay. If you have a good enough front, hopefully that can help with your back end on the defense.
moving to their arch rival and the team that everyone loves to hate, the New England Patriots. They had a ton of picks once again in the draft. I think they made 11 selections in the draft.
That's all right. They won't.
About 6 weeks
ago. They'll make up for that the next couple of years.
A lot of names I'm not familiar with. I can't make a lot of comments on some of these guys. The first one, a position of need after losing Wilfork, they landed Malcolm Brown, who was some thought to be a top 15 pick. He went 32nd. He's the mammoth tackle from Texas.
Everybody was kind of surprised that he fell there, and everybody was kind of in an uproar that the Patriots once again get a value pick at the last pick of the first round. When you
pick late in the first round, that's what happens. Right. And that's a lot of reasons why some of these teams that have been good, it seems like for the last decade, continue to be good. They make great value picks or overlook something that maybe isn't as big a deal in the long run. Then the next round, they make a typical Belichick pick here where they pick a defensive back that no one's heard of before in Jordan Richards from Stanford. They come back and do a similar move in the next round with Genio Grissom, the defensive end linebacker from Oklahoma. Finally, a guy that we've talked about on the show, Trey Flowers from Arkansas. We talked about him possibly fit in Dallas. And then another Trey. That was a theme through the draft. How many different ways was there to spell Trey? But this could have been one of the better picks for the Patriots in the fourth round, 111 overall. Trey Jackson from Florida State. We actually thought he'd go in the second round, so that's a great pick there. Then a couple of guys, Shaq Mason, Matthew Wells, A.J. Derby, Darryl Roberts, and Xavier Dixon. I really know very little about these guys. They tended to split their picks evenly between offense and defense, and actually threw in a special teams or team player, and one of the only long snappers ever picked in the draft. I think the last one was like 20 years ago or so, but this is even cooler because he's from Navy. And he's excellent at his job. He has a commitment to the armed forces that he'll have to probably uphold, but when that 4-year commitment is done, he will probably have a spot on the Patriots.
I think if certain
grabs.
Conditions happen,
that can be delayed,
they can defer it, right? And stuff like that.
But Joe Cardona was taken in 166 overall, the 5th round by the Patriots. That's a really cool selection by them. So
again, a lot of here. It'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays out because, I'd say last year kind of bought him, the benefit of the doubt, but there had been some kind of. Heat's probably not the correct word, but on Belichick, because he always just trades back and gets more and more picks, but sometimes they've missed on key picks, but they always seem to kind of make up for it and get other ones. So, there's no lack of talent on the Patriots, despite what some people would say. Positions you can say, like, they were hurting at wide receiver a little bit ago, but you can see where that got them.
Right. So that actually wraps up the 4 teams that we had remaining in our NFL draft recap. I know we went over them quickly. We wanted to fit them all in this show. And like I said, over the next few weeks, next few months, we're probably going to keep it a concise 30-minute show, focus on one topic. We'll have a couple of shows over the next few weeks leading into the beginning of July where we focus on something different. Maybe we'll talk some baseball. Maybe we'll do a listener special. But really, in the next month, we're going to start doing our football previews. And because we're doing a little bit shorter shows but focus on one thing, we're actually going to do just one division per show.
I'm excited for that. I'm excited
because we rushed through trying to do both, AFC East and NFC East on the same show. We're not doing that this year. We're doing one division per show. That gives us, a good almost 10 minutes per team instead of before, we get like 3 minutes.
Right.
So we're gonna try to focus in on that. But before we sign off this evening, I do want to take the time to have my dad walk over here. He's bringing in my special guest, the special delivery from last weekend, and I think she's asleep right now, which is bad because she probably won't sleep then the rest of the night.
That's kind of how it works, though. That's part of the deal, right?
Right, that is part of the deal. And she's waking up, so I'll try to position her properly without hurting her. Oh, she's talking for us. What do you got to say?
Go Cowboys.
I know that's not what she's saying.
So this is Hailey Linda Mays. Very unfortunate. Yeah, I know. But she does have an outfit on that says cutest Penn State fan. So we'll
take that.
I think we'll
agree on that one.
So that's her. Here she is, and is making our life interesting now for the next few months, and I'm sure much longer after that. Oh, I know. Oh yeah, get it all out. We'll let Pop-Up handle it.
Okay, I'm trying to keep her awake.
All right, so that's my new daughter, Hailey, and that was our 177th show wrapping up the NFL draft. I have no idea what we're going to talk about next week. We'll have a discussion about it. We'll put it up on the website. Do remember to go to the website. Remember, it's joemaysandjraff.com, or if it's even easier, you can just type in literally 5 letters, jmnjr.com, and that will redirect you to the website, and you can find all the old stuff on there. Recaps, the full video episodes and audio episodes, they're all up there for you to peruse throughout the week if you missed the live show. Anything else to add? Any
Just
shout
real
outs
quick,
for
we
you?
put this on Facebook the other day. My prediction is still intact for the NHL playoffs. With the Blackhawks win last night, they could win in 6. If they win in 6, I really don't have a rooting interest in the NHL playoffs, except for I would like to see Kimmo Timonen get the cup. That's kind of conditional on him being on the ice. Now, he did get to play, so his name will go on without an exemption. But I'd like to see him, if they're going to win it, I want to see him win it while he's playing in a game. And he's played the last 2 games, so that he actually gets to skate around and
hold it up.
instead
Because
of
he
being
hasn't
in a
said
suit.
that he's retiring.
So,
He had the blood clot scare, and he was
Right.
a great player in Philadelphia for a number of years.
So I
yeah,
would be happy
I
for
mean,
him.
I don't just like the Giants in baseball. I don't want to keep seeing the same team. This will be their 3rd cup
Right,
in
no,
about 5 or
yeah,
6
yeah.
years. The same thing with the Giants. They've won 3 of the last 6 or whatever it is. I don't normally want to see that, but I'm not a Lightning fan
Right,
either. Especially
exactly.
they beat the Flyers in 2004, which still grinds my gears. But whatever. Good luck to Kimmo Timonen.
And as of right now, we're still both right on pace for our NBA prediction.
That
as
we
well.
are. And I am
We'll have to wait
pulling
and see.
quite hard for LeBron and the Cavaliers tonight to go up 3-2. I think LeBron's going to have a monster game. I think they're going to pull it out. And I do think they're going to close out in Game 6, which will make someone quite happy.
Friend of the show, friend of ours, Joe, not this Joe, obviously, was at Game 4. A little disappointing. I know he's hoping. Well, he'll get to go to Game 6, but
No matter what.
he's really hoping they have a chance to kind of literally make history there in Cleveland. So
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
We'll talk about that some other time this summer, I'm sure. But we actually did fairly well with those so far.
Yeah, not too bad, and especially for not paying too much attention to both those sports during the regular season this year. I think we were able to call that pretty well, and good luck to Kimmo Timonen, and I hope LeBron and the Cavs can make it interesting and pull that out for the city and all the LeBron haters out there.
Come on, Steph Curry, let it out.
All right, I think that's everything then. Thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 177th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.